Thank you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. It is July 10th, 2025. I'm going to be talking to you about what's going on with the West and Russia. As we know, it's a lot more than just what's happening now. We went over this, but I want to read you an interesting article that I think it's important to what's going on. Especially regarding World War III and also what Russia's been going through with, like I had said in a few other videos that Alex Craner said and Colonel Gregor said. So let's go to the video, or the article, and let's see here. So, Dmitry Trenin, the West's war on Russia will go beyond Ukraine. For Moscow, the real war is global, and it's just begun. Yes, Colonel McGregor said that. Practically on all fronts, all around them, Russia, there's all these real national security threats, not made-up ones like we have here. Now, Dmitry Trenin is a research professor at the High School of Economics and a lead research fellow at the Institute of World Economy and International Relations. He is also a member of the Russian International Affairs Council. Okay, well, let's see what he has to say. The trademark style of the current U.S. President Donald Trump is verbal spectacle. His statements, brash, contradictory, sometimes theatrical, should be monitored but not overestimated. They are not inherently favorable or hostile to Russia, and we must remember Trump is not the king of America. The Trump revolution that many anticipated at the beginning of the year appears to have given way to Trump's own evolution, a drift toward accommodation with the American establishment. Yeah, that's how I was feeling in my last couple of videos. You got it, right? In that light, it's time to assess the interim results of our special diplomatic operation. There have now been 6 presidential phone calls, several rounds of talks between foreign ministers and national security aides, and sustained contact at other levels. The most obvious positive outcome is the restoration of dialogue between Russia and the United States, a process that had been severed under the Biden administration. Crucially, this revived dialogue extends beyond Ukraine. A range of potential areas for cooperation have been mapped out, from geopolitical stability to transportation and sport. These may not carry immediate strategic weight, but they lay the groundwork for future engagement. Under Trump, the dialogue is unlikely to break off again, though its tone and pace may shift. One visible result of this diplomacy was the resumption of talks with the Ukrainian side in Istanbul. While these negotiations currently hold little political substance and the recent prisoner exchanges occurred independently of them, they nonetheless reaffirm a core tenet of Russian diplomacy. We are ready for a political resolution to the conflict. Still, these are technical and tactical achievements. The strategic reality remains unchanged. It was never realistic to expect Trump to offer Russia a deal on Ukraine that met our security requirements. Nor, for that matter, would Russia accept one that compromised its long-term security interests. Likewise, any notion that Trump would deliver Ukraine to the Kremlin, join Moscow in undermining the EU, or push for a new Yalta agreement with Russia and China was always fantasy. So the page has turned. What comes next? Trump will almost certainly sign the new U.S. sanctions bill into law. But he'll try to preserve discretion in how those measures are applied. The sanctions will add friction to global trade, but they will not derail Russian policy. On the military front, Trump will deliver the remaining aid packages approved under Biden and perhaps supplement them with modest contributions of his own. But going forward, it will be Western Europe, especially Germany, that supplies Ukraine. Interesting, he says that, often by buying U.S.-made systems and re-exporting them. Meanwhile, the United States will continue to furnish Kiev with battleground intelligence, particularly for deep strikes inside Russian territory. None of this suggests the conflict will end in 2025, nor will it end when hostilities in Ukraine eventually wind down. That's because the fight is not fundamentally about Ukraine. What we are witnessing is an indirect war between the West and Russia, part of a much broader global confrontation. The West is fighting to preserve its dominance, and Russia is defending itself, is asserting its sovereign right to exist on its own terms. The war will be long, and the United States, with Trump or without him, will remain our adversary. The outcome will shape not just the fate of Ukraine, but the future of Russia itself. Fascinating. Fascinating what this man says, and of course, definitely see what he's saying there. And yes, it's going to go on, as we know from the prophecies, that Russia has to defend all around itself. And this is, and then of course, as I've read you the 7 phases of the World War III from Elder Joseph of Vadapudi, he basically says that Russia is going to have to go through and march down through Georgia and Armenia and Azerbaijan and to push back American troops. So yeah, this is not, and this doesn't count what's going on with Europe. I mean, there's a whole thing on that with St. Paisios, a new, more detailed video on his prophecies. And of course, that's always revealed, more details are always revealed the closer you get to prophecies. And again, our repentance can change certain aspects of those prophecies, but it won't change the fact that we're in World War III, and we will be going through it, and it's a terrible thing, but we can try to ask for God's mercy to lessen the catastrophes. In any case, I thought that was a very interesting read, and makes a lot of sense to me. Now, one other article I want to read is because I was remembering what John Helmer said probably a month or two ago when he and Ray McGovern were on Dialogue Works, and and John Helmer thought that the Russians were going to use the Oreshnik move or the Oreshnik option if they're threatened, seriously threatened. But I want to give you this information. I thought it was kind of interesting, so I'm going to share it. It's forget nukes. This is Russia's new deterrence weapon. This was out July 7th. Why Russia doesn't need to go nuclear to make its point, and how Oreshnik makes that clear. Just before dawn on November 21st, 2024, a fireball streaked across the sky over the Dnieper River. It wasn't a meteor. It wasn't a drone. I remember that, seeing that on video. The news. The explosion that followed, precise, deep, and eerily silent on the surface, tore through the massive Yuzhmash defense facility in southeastern Ukraine. I've forgotten it was actually quiet. Footage of the strike spread within hours, picked apart by open source analysts and intelligence services alike, but it wasn't until Russian President Vladimir Putin confirmed it that the world had a name for what it had witnessed. Oreshnik, a new kind of Russian ballistic missile. Indeed, it was very, very different. It seemed to be like a cloud, in the clouds, and it separated, and it would drop from two separate, drop vertically from two separate areas. It was kind of creepy, but kind of fascinating at the same time, if you want to be honest, but it was definitely scary. And yeah, I've forgotten about the silence to it. That's even more scary for people who, they may not know it's coming. I mean, isn't it supersonic or something? Now, capable of reaching speeds above Mach 10, yes, supersonic, surviving re-entry temperatures of 4,000 degrees Celsius and delivering kinetic force that rivals tactical nuclear weapons. The Oreshnik isn't just fast, it's different. In less than a year, it has moved from classified prototype to serial production, with confirmed plans for forward deployment in Belarus by the end of 2025. Its emergence suggests that Russia is rewriting the rules of strategic deterrence, not with treaty-breaking escalation, but with something quieter, subtler, and potentially just as decisive. So, what exactly is the Oreshnik missile? Where did it come from? And what are its capabilities? And how might it reshape the battlefield? RT explains what's known so far about Russia's latest breakthrough in non-nuclear strategic weaponry. So, how it works. The missile that struck the Yushmash facility in, can't pronounce that, known in Ukraine as Dnipro, left behind no scorched landscape. Wow. No flattened perimeter. Whoa, that is really incredible. Instead, analysts examining satellite imagery noted a narrow impact zone, structural collapse below ground level, and almost surgical surface disruption. It wasn't the scale of destruction that stood out, it was its shape. I wonder if this will work. So you can see if it, yeah, there it is. I mean, this thing was unreal. Just almost phantom-like, but oh my gosh, that was so odd. This signature pointed to something new. According to available data and expert observations, the Oreshnik carries a cluster-type penetrative warhead, likely composed of multiple high-density submunitions. The detonation occurs only after the payload burrows into its target, a design meant to maximize internal damage to hardened military infrastructure. Putin has stated that Oreshnik's warheads can withstand re-entry temperatures of up to 4,000 degrees Celsius. To survive such heat and remain stable at terminal speed, the payload would need to be encased in advanced composite materials, likely drawing on recent developments in heat-resistant ceramics and carbon structures used in hypersonic glide vehicles. One of the defining features of the system is its ability to maintain hypersonic velocity during the final phase of flight. Unlike traditional ballistic warheads that decelerate as they descend, Oreshnik reportedly retains speeds exceeding Mach 10, possibly Mach 11, even in dense atmospheric layers. This enables it to strike with massive kinetic energy, increasing penetration and lethality without requiring a large explosive charge. At such speeds, even a non-nuclear warhead becomes a strategic weapon. A concentrated high-velocity impact is enough to destroy command bunkers, radar sites, or missile silos. The weapon's effectiveness doesn't rely on blast radius, but on precise high-energy delivery. That makes it both harder to detect and harder to intercept. In doctrinal terms, Oreshnik represents a new category, a non-nuclear strategic ballistic missile. It occupies the space between a conventional long-range strike systems and nuclear ICBMs, with enough reach, speed, and impact to alter battlefield calculations, but without crossing the nuclear threshold. From poplar to hazel, the origins of Oreshnik. Though the Oreshnik missile system entered the public spotlight in 2024, its technological roots trace back decades. The architecture, design philosophy, and even its name follow a lineage shaped by one institution, the Moscow Institute of Thermal Technology. Founded during the Cold War to develop advanced solid-fueled missile systems, MIT has long been responsible for some of Russia's most sophisticated mobile strategic platforms. These include the Temp-2S, Pioneer, and later the Topol family, Russia's first mobile intercontinental ballistic missiles. The naming convention has remained surprisingly consistent over the years. Most of MIT's missiles are named after trees. Topol, which is poplar, Topol M, Osina, which is aspen, Yars, a type of ash, and Kedar, cedar. The new system, Oreshnik, hazel, fits within that tradition, both symbolically and organizationally. Analysts believe that the Oreshnik may be based in part on the RS-26 Rubez, a mobile ICBM developed by MIT and tested from 2011 to 2015. The RS-26 was essentially a shortened version of the Yars ICBM, designed to deliver high-precision strikes at intermediate ranges. Development was quietly paused in the mid-2010s, likely in response to the constraints of the NIF Treaty, which prohibited land-based missiles with ranges of 500 to 5,500 kilometers. That treaty is no longer in force. After the U.S. formally withdrew in 2019, Russia was free to resume development in a domain that had been frozen for decades. The appearance of Oreshnik just 5 years later suggests that its core components, propulsion systems, targeting modules, and mobile chassis, were already well advanced. Interesting picture there. What began as a one-off operational strike has since evolved into a full-scale weapons program. In June 2025, during a meeting with graduates of Russia's top military academies, Putin announced that the Oreshnik missile system had entered serial production. The speed of this transition from battlefield debut to mass production is notable. It suggests that both the missile system and its supporting infrastructure had been maturing quietly in the background, likely building off earlier research conducted under the RS-26 program. Even more significant than the production itself is the plan for forward deployment. On July 2, 2025, during an Independence Day gathering in Minsk, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko publicly confirmed that the first Oreshnik units would be stationed in Belarus by the end of the year. Let's see what this said. This weapon has proven itself extremely effective in combat conditions and in a very short time. We agreed with Putin in Volgograd, Lukashenko said. The first Oreshnik positions will be in Belarus. You've seen how this system performs. It will be here before the year is out. The move carries both logistical logic and strategic weight. Belarus has long provided heavy-duty mobile chassis for Russian missile systems, including the one used by Oreshnik. That industrial synergy makes Minsk a national hub for deployment, but this is more than technical convenience. With a minimum range of 800 kilometers and a maximum reportedly almost 5,500, the Oreshnik station in Belarus would place virtually all of Central and Western Europe within reach. For Russia, it represents a non-nuclear forward deterrent. For NATO, it introduces a new class of threat, one that is fast, precise, and difficult to intercept, yet remains below the threshold of nuclear retaliation. In practical terms, this also opens the door to a possible joint Russian-Belarusian command structure for missile operations outside Russian territory, a development that would further formalize military integration between the two states. It's very tiny. You probably can't see this very well. Talking about the different sizes and what they all are: the solid, liquid, mobile, silo, total weight, anywhere from about 4,000 to 200,000. So they have all that in there. Okay. See how long? Yeah, only have a little bit more. For decades, the term strategic weapon has been synonymous with nuclear arms, tools of last resort, deployed not for use but for deterrence. Oreshnik changes that equation. By combining intercontinental reach, hypersonic speed, and precision penetrative capability, the system introduces a new tier of force, one that sits below the nuclear threshold but far above conventional long-range artillery or cruise missiles. Unlike nuclear warheads, Oreshnik's payloads can be used without inviting global condemnation or risking escalation beyond control. Yet their destructive potential, especially against hardened military targets or critical infrastructure, makes them a credible tool of strategic coercion. This is the core of what we can call a non-nuclear deterrence doctrine, the ability to achieve battlefield or political objectives through advanced conventional systems that mimic the strategic impact of nuclear weapons without crossing the line. In this emerging framework, Oreshnik is not just a missile. It is a prototype of future war logic, fast enough to strike before detection, survivable enough to evade interception, and powerful enough to shape decisions before war even begins. Guy who wrote this, Dmitry Kornev, is a military expert, founder, and author of Military Russia Project. Wow, this is fascinating. You know, I never thought I would find anything about weapons to be interesting, but the fact that it was silent, what really got me is how it's eerily silent on the surface, and that it can withstand, and that it's Mach 10, and it can survive re-entry temperatures of 4,000 degrees Celsius, and the way it works, it's unbelievable. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but it's something I felt like sharing, and I thought quite interesting. So there you go. In any case, thanks so much for watching. What are your thoughts on this? I know you probably watched it, in 2024 when it was basically displayed for everybody to see, and how that worked. It's just so different from anything I've ever seen. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. Please follow, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you would, and like my channel. Like my videos if you like them. Share my videos if you feel like they're worth sharing. And thanks so much for following my channel. Thanks so much for all of your support. Until next time.